What are we seeing? Are we able to see? Audio వినపట్లేదా? Audio is there?
నీకు లాగిన్ అయితే ఎక్కువ వచ్చేస్తుంది సార్.
Do not paying thumbs అంటే screen sharing. Shall we start the broadcast showing the main screen?
Yeah. So, have you started recording?
We started recording, it's okay.
Yeah.
But MS, is the screen seen here? స్క్రీన్ కనపడుతుందా లేదా మీకు? మీరు మ్యూట్ చేయొచ్చు కదండి.
బట్ స్టిల్ ఎక్కువ వచ్చేస్తుంది.
మరి స్క్రీన్ కనపడుతుంది లేదా? అట్లా కనపడుతుంది. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Myself, Dr. Raghu, would like to welcome you for this straight talk on stress and heart disease. We all know that stress is an integral part of modern life. We also know that without stress, we cannot live. But at the same time, we do realize that stress is leading to a lot of diseases. We think commonly that stress leads to hypertension and cardiovascular disease. But at the same time, we need to understand that stress as a part of your life is inevitable, and today I am going to share with you certain tips and tricks to identify stress and the manifestations of stress, how you can reduce the stress, and I will try to look at how stress presents at various ages in life. So this is the with this outcome I am going to discuss with you the various parts of this presentation. Okay. Stress is an unavoidable part of life. Stress can be discussed as a physical, chemical, or emotional factor that causes bodily or mental tension, and can be a major cause in disease causation. So what happens many a time in life, we do realize that stress happens to be a reasonable feature wherein a patient or a person responds in an abnormal fashion for this for the stress. So we need to understand the stress is good at certain point of time, and then stress sometimes is going to be harmful. We do see that patients who present with stress can present sometimes as a doctor. I understand that patients who present with stress usually tend to have an early part of life, they tend to be little disturbed. But as the time goes on, if the stress is unbearable, then they can go to a suicidal type of an attitude. So on the right side of the screen, I want to share an infographic with you where if the stress is low, the person is not motivated to perform. But the stress has to be at an optimal level to say that the person progresses further in life. But the stress is too much, it can disorganize you. So what we need to understand is stress is an inevitable component of life, but at the same time, an an unhindered or a large amount of stress is going to put you into anxiety and disorganization. So we need to understand to keep the stress at an optimal level so that the person starts moving in the right direction in life. In the recent Chennai floods, you must have seen that a lot of volunteers have worked in tandem with the people of the National Disaster Rescue Force. These people represent the National Disaster Rescue Force. These are normal volunteers, normal people like you and me. How could they do that? Because they are motivated to help the co-human beings. They are motivated to save the various animals, and they work all in tandem at the same level. How could they work in the same level is because they had the stress. This stress is a positive stress. So the stress could be either a positive stress or stress could be a negative stress. We should always aim to have stress at a reasonable level, otherwise this stress could be of harm for us. Even in this picture, in recent Chennai floods, also shows once again that people who had when they are encountered with a bad state of life, they tended to respond to the stress. So what happens is in the early 1900s, that is around 1900 to 1905, there were a series of experiments which have been conducted on animals by a scientist called Cannon. So what he did was he subjected dogs to stress. Whenever a dog has been stressed, the dog usually either runs away, like what you see in normal life, or sometimes it fights back. So, what he has coined the term called fight or flight response. So normally when we are encountered with a stress, you take either of the two approaches. You try to fight out your stress and get out of the stress, or at the same time, if you are feel that that is an unsurmountable form of a problem for you, you turn to try to run away from the problem. So here you can see people are trying to fight the nature's fury and come out of the problem. So this is a fight or flight type of response. But what happens is, if you start fighting with a hill, you are going to lose the battle. So sometimes, if you fight against very big obstacles, you might lose. So you need to measure the stress and keep the stress under control. So the stress has to be there to keep you progressing, but at the same time, you cannot have a very large amount of stress for you in life. A very common scenario I would like to discuss here is people who encounter the same degree of stress. For example, two of your friends are traveling in the same car, you have been stuck in a traffic jam. You might say, "Oh, what is this traffic jam?" But at the same time, your friend might be looking at it as an opportunity to listen to the music as an opportunity to one unwind himself before reaching home. So what you need to look is, same for the same event, people react in different ways. So some people look at every event as a positive thing, certain people look at every event as a negative thing. For example, you see a glass which is filled up to the half, you can look at it as a glass which is half filled with water, or you might look at it as a glass which is half empty. So the same event, different people respond in different ways. How a person responds in different ways to the same stress depends upon his nurture. That means when he's being grown up, how his external environment, how his parents, how his school, how his peers, how did they influence his response to the external stress, has been shown to be an important component how a person responds to the stress. So the same stressful event, a person can have a positive response or a negative response. So in this slide, I would like to now go on to a point, why should a person differ from another person in the degree of response to a particular problem. So for example, a car you have ordered for a taxi, the taxi did not arrive on time. So what happens? You will say that, oh, this taxi provider is not good, he is not useless. You might forget upon the instances where he has supported you by sending the taxi in time or before time. So sometimes you try to have an all or nothing distortion. That means you there is sometimes an employee who is working with you, who has been supporting you for the so many months or years. Sometimes he does a mistake, you forget all that what he has done for you, so you have an all or nothing general distortion. The other type of distortion is over generalization. You say that, for example, a doctor makes a mistake, then you say that, oh, all the doctors are bad. So such a type of over generalization is also another way where you try to have a problem, saying that the community is bad, the country is bad. Such a type of over generalization promotes a negative impact on your thinking process. Sometimes a person does a lot of good work, but what happens when so much of good work has been done, you don't realize because of your previous bias towards that person. You feel that a thief who has been reformed, you still have a mental picture of him as a thief. So you have some mental filters which will distort your way how you think about a person. You can disqualify the positive. Sometimes a person, if you have a bad impression, you can say whatever good he does, it is not good, and jumping to conclusions. Magnification or minimization. Sometimes a person is so close to you, you love him so much that you feel that whatever bad he does also, you say that no, no, it is okay, oh chalta hai. So such type of attitude is also a form of distortion, that you can take it as a positive thing for the temporary basis, but eventually that forms a negative basis, so that adds on to a negative stress. Sometimes you communicate with your colleagues or with your spouse or with your children with should statements. That means you should do this, you should do that. So what happens is, if they do not obey your order, then it becomes a distortion and it becomes a negative thinking. And labeling a person as good or bad is another form of distortion. So in this slide we try to show you a number of distortions by which you try to form an impression about the person and carry forward that impression all through your life, and that can form be a potential trigger for stress. So that is why a person differs from another person in distortion. So what you can do about it, you can do a modification and not to have hard feelings or hard impressions about a particular person or a particular place. Everything in this world is transient. So what happens is, as you go forward, you feel that that is not an important thing in life. As I discuss later in this presentation, you will say how you can overcome the stress. And I will share with you so many tips which will look very simple and which are eminently practicable. We know that stress could be good already, but at the same time, we all of us know that stress could be dangerous to that particular person. So, stress can cause an progression of the blood clot or formation of the blood clot that could be responsible for a heart attack. Stress could cause increase in the acid production in the stomach, so that can cause burning sensation in the stomach. Stress can cause increase in the blood pressure. Stress suppresses the immune system. Stress increases the cholesterol. Stress retards the digestion of the food. It reduces the energy levels. It increases the production of blood sugar. So, for example, a person who had a heart attack or person who had met with an accident, it is an acute stress, a physical form of the stress. So this type of physical stress can immediately rise up to the shoot of the blood sugar or blood pressure. So also we see commonly patients who had met with an accident, and when they meet with an accident at the same time when we come to the hospital, we see that their blood pressure is very high, their blood sugar levels are very high, and because of this acute stress, once in a while we see that the person has a heart attack also. So we need to understand that stress has got positive effects on the body but has got a lot of negative effects on the heart. So that is the topic of the day. This slide shows you the number of diseases which could be caused or which could be accentuated with the stress. If you take the 26 alphabets, you can easily complete the number of diseases from A to Z with the various diseases. You can see this is an entire list of diseases which are caused by stress. They need not necessarily be caused, but certain times that stress could be accentuating this. For example, a common problem which nowadays affecting young women is infertility. We need to understand that women who have high levels of stress tend to be suffering from infertility, or their infertility problem gets more and more. Person who has got cancer, if he is stressed out, the cancer disease progresses so rapidly that he dies faster. So stress is a problem which hastens the progression of the disease. So this is what the stress causes directly, which we have seen in this one. But there are certain secondary responses of that particular person to stress, which can also be contributing to the diseases. In fact, if you look in a societal perspective, this is a more common problem or a bigger challenge, because when you have encountered stress, for example, an examination, nowadays, when you see young teens who are appearing for their MSET examination, we see because of their lot of stress, they tend to overeat and then they gain weight. Sometimes, because of stress, they watch endless hours of TV. Some people, when they encounter stress, they tend to withdraw from their spouse, they tend to withdraw from their partners, they withdraw or they cocoon themselves from their social life. So, this is why they avoid problems. A common scenario which I would like to share in this presentation is obesity. For example, if a person is obese, he tries to avoid facing the society. That is where once he withdraws from the society, he starts to overeat and tends to gain weight. Sometimes, because of a social picture or because of the perception of the people, if of the people, sometimes some people undereat and lead to weight loss. So, what we need to understand is stress is a problem of perception. When the people perceive an event as a stressful event, stress increases. If the same person or another person feels the stress in a lighter form, so the people will not have stress. The same event, depending upon the age at which you are there, the stress might, you might feel stress, but the same problem after some years you feel it is not at all an important thing. So stress is depends upon the time of your life, or the depending upon the circumstances in which you are in. Sometimes people with stress tend to sleep much, tend to drink more alcohol. These are all very common things. These are all you think because by drinking alcohol or smoking or overeating, you try to, you think that you are suppressing the stress. But what we need to understand in this presentation also we will discuss is diet itself is one of the most common stressors for the person. Stress is a response, stressor is the inciting factor for the stress. Sometimes you tend to shout against people or behave violently. That's also another response to stress. Some people take sleeping pills, sometimes take unsafe drugs or anti anxiety pills. And if the stress is too much, certain people can lead to suicide also. So we need to understand that these are all unhealthy responses to stress. You should always try to build the stress in a healthy form, but not in an unhealthy form. Now, quickly, we will look at the various diseases that can cause stress and how we are going to save ourselves from the stress. The first thing is on the heart. In the heart, stress can lead to fatty deposits in the blood vessels. It can cause blood clotting in the arteries, and sometimes gradual progression of the stress. Instead of if the person has got a rapid burst of the stress, the blood can get clotted, or the plaque which is in the blood vessel, the plaque which is in the blood vessel can get bursted and block the artery. But if the stress is over a gradual time over period, it leads to narrowing of the artery. That is what we see in this presentation. Stress, even though directly is not responsible for high blood pressure, continuous stress over time can lead to high blood pressure, and it can be one of the reasons why a patient is not responding to the medicines. Normally, when we see a patient with high blood pressure, we give them medicines. If the person is not responding, then we need to look at what are the reasons. One of the common reasons why I see is people tend to have stress. Directly, stress will not cause an elevation of the blood pressure, but the behavior of the person to the stress, like for example, he starts overeating, drinks more caffeine, drinks more alcohol, smokes much, all these things can lead to high blood pressure. So that is how stress can cause high blood pressure. On this gut or on the stomach, stress can have varied effects. For example, you had a heavy meal the previous night. The next day you have abdominal flatulence. You think that you ate more than what is required, but you need to understand that is a common form of stress. This stress is you are giving stress to the gut. So you are making the gut do work which is beyond its capacity. So that is how the gut is getting stressed, and that is manifested as pain abdomen, increased acid production, and increased belchings. Similarly, what happens is if the person has stressed out himself or stresses the gut motility will decrease. So it is very common for us to observe people who are stressed to be suffering from constipation. In addition, when you are stressed, for the gut to function normally, there are a lot of small bacteria which are present in the gut, and these bacteria, if you are stressed out, they die off. So, if you are stressed out, the gut microbacteria die. If you promote a healthy lifestyle and a less stressful event, the gut microbia or the gut microbes survive. If the gut has got microbes, then your ability to digest food, your ability to overcome stress will be much more smoother. Whenever you have stress, as we all experience, it leads to increase in acid production. So this acidity also causes abdominal distress. Then there are certain other important organs in the body like immune system. So people who have got an immune system abnormality, also immune system abnormality, they tend to develop some abscess. For example, you must have seen people who go for examination or people who are under immense stress tend to develop furuncles or boils on the body. Sometimes they can get ulcers in the mouth. Sometimes they can get rapid hair loss. So, all these things are a manifestation of stress. For a particular person, you can have one form as a predominant manifestation, but certain people tend to have all these manifestations. So, people developing loss of the hair, developing oral ulcers, developing like some boils or some skin infections, all these are all due to a depression of the immune system. So, whenever there is stress, the immune system is depressed. So, also, we see nowadays lot of people with hypothyroid problem or thyroid problems. So whenever the person experiences a lot of stress, these people tend to develop hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism. So the thyroid abnormalities, what we see nowadays in our day-to-day life, a rapid spurt in the thyroid problems is also related to the stress. We see a lot of people who have got depression and insomnia. Insomnia means sleeplessness. Sleeplessness. So, lack of sleep and anxiety, depression are also caused by stress. So, stress does not affect only the heart or only the brain, but it affects immune system, it affects endocrine system, that means the hormonal system, and it also affects the gut. You will be surprised that even in people who are suffering from cancer, if they have got stress, so adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol, these are the three important hormones which are responsible for the stress. So in the under the influence of these hormones which are produced during stressful periods, the cancer flourishes. So stress is an excellent medium for the cancer to flourish and grow. So for people who have got cancer, it is important for them to reduce the levels of the stress by a lot of techniques which I will share with you now. It is very common. You must have seen in many movies that people who have got, who are stressed out, suddenly the villain in a movie gets stressed out. So what happens? He tends to develop an acute account of breathlessness. So this is what we call as acute asthma. So this is a very common manifestation of stress. So whenever there is a stress, there are a lot of hormones which are produced in the lungs, and that will affect the lungs, and the lungs become narrowed and inflamed. That is how the patient develops a worsening of asthma. So we have now discussed the effect of stress on stomach, liver, gut, brain, immune system, heart, so on and so forth. There are different phases of stress. Stress is your response to a perceived threat. So you have to got to get the power to overcome this stress. So stress is a transient thing. You should be know how to overcome the stress. Now we will discuss certain clinical scenarios or life scenarios where the stress can be there or stress cannot be there. For example, you compare a stress in a woman versus a stress in a man. Normally, women, because of their hormonal predisposition, tend to have early stressful response. It is not for all women nor for all men, but it is a majority response. Men tend to have little less muted response to the stress. This is why, because women have got multiple responsibilities nowadays. It is more nowadays. They need to take care of their children. They need to take care of their household work. They need to take care of their older relatives. They need to take care of their work. Nowadays, it is common for women to work, and women have a second shift because of these multiple reasons and of their hormonal balance. Women tend to have more stress compared to men. But the difference in in men is men tend to have more of financial stress, and they tend to have more of work related stress. Women, on the contrary, tend to have more of domestic stress. But nowadays, they tend to have a double whammy, like domestic as well as office stress. Because of the increasing stress in women, women tend to develop more diabetes and tend to develop more heart attacks. So, so women nowadays are no more immune from heart disease because of the stress which they are experiencing nowadays. So let us see the common scenarios in which a woman can get stressed. In women, distress is because of transportation difficulties. That means they don't get the vehicle on time to transport them, and they have got a lot of family demands in the form of children and domestic needs. Because of them, women tend to have distress. In addition, for both men and women, they can have an argument with the spouse, which can also potentially aggravate the distress. On the contrary, men tend to have financial problems and work overload, or sometimes men tend to have an argument with the child, which is responsible for the distress. But what we need to understand is, because women are more prone for stress, they need to develop tailor made strategies to overcome stress. Women tend to befriend people. So if you have lot of friends at home or at your office or your childhood friends, you can need to continue to their friendship and befriend with them. That is how one of the simple techniques to cope up stress. The second scenario where stress is very common is aging. In elderly people, stress could be due to their loneliness, due to their financial stress, or about an illness, or worry about an impending illness, about possibility of accident, and an argument with spouse. Stress is a very common thing amongst elderly people. If I see in my day to day patient practice in the hospital, I see lot of stressed out elderly individuals because they have so many external stressors which they have never been exposed in the past. The problem when an elderly person is affected by stress is they tend to develop brain stroke, they tend to develop heart attack, they tend to develop cancer, and most importantly, they tend to develop a memory loss. If their brain is stressed continuously, they tend to develop a loss of the memory. Sleep apnea is another growing problem. That means apnea means cessation of breathing or stopping of breathing. That means during sleep, if the person stops breathing, that is what we call in medicine as sleep apnea. Stress is an important contributor for the development of sleep apnea. So, how can elderly people overcome stress? Elderly people can overcome stress by exercise, by attending a mind body program. That is the reason why nowadays yogic gurus like Ramdev Baba, where they have a body activity as well as a mind activity by doing yogic classes. Elderly people, if they attend them, they can easily cope up the stress. In addition, they need to have a behavioral therapy. That means they need to modify the responses. For example, an elderly person might feel that he is not getting the same amount of attention which he used to get when he was in service or when he was working. Such a thought has to be gradually be made understood by the person, and gradually he should modify his behavior and reinforce his thought. So that is what we call as behavioral therapy. Sometimes if the stress is so much in elderly, counseling is an important way by which the elderly people will be able to cope up the stress. Nowadays we see young children in their early teens, they attempt suicide, and some of them succeed in that. This is because of lot of stress in the teens is due to lot of factors. We have seen lot of quite a few instances where ragging has provoked a person to take an extreme step of committing suicide. So these type of external stressors can drag a teen towards suicidal tendencies. So this is because of excessive reading pressure or bullying, like in a case of ragging, or sometimes they could be worried what is the next future for them. I see many commonly graduates who are early graduation, they are worried about their future, and sometimes they resort to unnecessary steps like smoking, alcohol intake, and all that, because this is a response to the stress. But young teens in the 16s and 17s or 18s age, they don't have the mental stability, so they will be pushed towards some at an extreme step like suicide. We need to understand that in the teens, in the elderly people, we understood that stress could cause heart stroke, brain stroke, etc. But whereas in the teens, if they have stress, that can cause stomach upset, headache, trouble in sleeping, anxiety, depression, and suicide. So the stress in teens manifests differently from stress in the adults or elderly people. How can teens overcome the stress? They can listen to music, watch TV, play video games. But sometimes people can unnecessarily resort to substance abuse and eating disorders. How can people overcome stress, especially in the teen stress? These are the ways in which the teens usually try to cope up, but they are not healthy. The best ways is to do some breathing exercises, doing yoga, involving themselves in an regular exercise program tames the teen stress. Sometimes people who have got elderly people at home will be extremely stressed. That is a very common cause of stress, and we need to cope up with the stress by letting off go the perfectionism. You should not think that you should do the best possible, but you should try to do what is possible in your limitations. Focus on what is important, and the rest will take of itself. So these are certain common tips for a caregiver. That means people who have got a elderly person at home to overcome the stress. Finally, we look at work and related stress. So, work stress is because of the child care support which is required. We can overcome this, the child care, by taking some child care support. Or if you have got a lot of amount of work, you can share the job. You can reduce the number of working hours while walking, while going to the office or to the hospital. You can communicate on the telephone. You can have flexible and limited work time. Having said all these things, if you ask me to synopsize the entire few tips, I will say that two things are important quick remedies for stress. One is choosing a calming focus. Keep calm and stay focused. Let go and relax. Just relax and let the things go. Everything falls in place soon. So these are two quick remedies for stress. As I have discussed, diet is a very common form of stress. Recently, when I gave a radio program, the RJ was asking me what is diet and stress. So the same thing now I'm going to expand little bit here. If you have a full plate like this, one quarter of your plate should be with vegetables. You see, you got onions, radish, carrot, spring onion, broccoli, papaya, like that. You don't have potatoes because potatoes belong to the polysaccharide content group and they are not considered to be vegetables. The second quarter should be with fruits. So, like apple, grapes, oranges, strawberries, like that. The third quarter should be protein. Protein in the form of fish, meat, beans, legumes, egg, milk. These are all the common forms of protein. This is the third thing. The fourth group where you have is the polysaccharide group, where you can take some breads, some millets, some grains, oats, and all those things should form the fourth quarter. So only about 5 to 10% should be contributed by oils and fish. So you can see the fish and the oils, olives, they should contribute about 10%. These are the recommendations given by the European Union for a healthy plate. If you eat a healthy plate like this, if you divide your diet with vegetables, fruits, proteins, polysaccharides, and certain oils and fish, you are going to have a less diet related stress. You can take the best drinks or pure water and unsweetened tea. So the better you are off leaving the sugar, the less stress you are going to experience. Sugar is one of the most high stress causing items. And if you see in this entire plate, you do not see salt as a major part. I see in my when I encounter a lot of patients, they tend to take a lot of salt intake, extra salt than what is required, but that does not form a part of the healthy plate. So sugar and salt have to be avoided to reduce the stress. Apart from that, how you eat are also important. You need to sit down while you have your food. You should turn off the television. You have to have meal at a particular time. And whenever you are having your food, you have to have your entire senses on the food. That means you focus on your eyes on the food, your tongue on the food, your nose on the food. So all your senses should be onto the food. So that is when you eat mindfully. And it is very common nowadays for people to gulp the food. You need to understand that you should chew your food to reduce the amount of stress. So diet as a stress can be overcome by good dietary portions as well as eating in a very conscious way. So now I come to the third part of the presentation is how do you manage stress? To manage stress, you need to do some sort of physical activity or yoga. But to do this such a sort of activity, you need to establish a routine. Very commonly, people ask me what is the best time to perform an exercise or do yoga. The best time is early in the morning and before breakfast. You need to practice regularly till it becomes a habit. You can practice at least you can practice up to 2 times a day, and you should do it at least 10 to 20 minutes per day. Yoga is a very Indian, is a common form of exercise. It relaxes both the mind as well as the body. And as you know, International Yoga Day is by the United Nations has been announced this year. So what we need to understand is people all over the world are recognizing the keen interaction between mind and body. So, yoga is one of the simple ways, inexpensive ways, and easy way to control both your stress as well as your body. So, both your mind and body are under your control. In this slide, I will show you a lot of examples, notable people who have been advocates, strong advocates of yoga. Michelle Obama, wife of Mrs. Obama, late Dr. Y.S. Rajshekar Reddy, now the current Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, Dr. Chandrababu Naidu, and Mr. Narendra Modi, Honorable Prime Minister of India. All of them do yoga regularly to control their mind and body. If such busy people are able to find time for yoga, why not we, normal people? We definitely find time. If you have an excuse for not doing, I would simply label it as laziness rather than lack of time. A simple trick is to overcome the stress is you should resort to a form of baby breathing. If you see a small kid or an infant, that means less than 1 year of age, you see their abdomen. Their abdomen moves with each and every breath up and down. That is what we call as abdominal breathing. But what happens is as you progress in age, your abdominal gut increases and it refuses to move. So, because of that, the breathing is mainly from the chest. So, an adult usually breathes from the chest, whereas a child breathes from both from the chest as well as from the abdomen. So, that is what we call as the belly breathing. But as you become an elder person, your belly doesn't move, so you tend to have breathing only to the chest. So, if you practice a belly breathing, that means you take a deep breath, filling up to the abdomen. You have a conscious focus on the abdomen and release the air from the abdomen out through your mouth. Then that is what we call as the belly breathing. Belly breathing is a good for your heart, good for your health, as well as good to reduce your stress. So it de-stresses the mind. How do you take a deep breathing? So the technique of deep breathing is you need to close one nostril and then breathe through the other nostril. So when you are breathing, you can have a small quote like breathe in peace and calm. When you breathe out, you can say breathe out tension and anxiety. So like that you can have a breathe in and a breathe out technique of deep breathing. The other technique which can help you to reduce your stress is a body scan technique. Commonly, it is done in the lying position, but it can be done even in the sitting position also. The way how you have to do it is, you don't need to have lot of time for you to do this body scan to reduce your stress. You need to have a few movements. You can lie down comfortably with a comfortable clothing. Just breathe in calmly and breathe out slowly. Breathe in calmly and breathe out slowly. And then while you are doing this, you focus on each and every part of the body and asking it to get relaxed. Head, slowly relax. Focus on the eyes, slowly relax. Ears, slowly relax. Like that, you try to relax your each and every part of the body and concentrate deliberately on relaxing each and every muscle. And after you complete from the head to the toe, you can repeat the same from again till you're completely relaxed. So we have understood that breathing is a common form of relaxation technique. Body scanning, that means scanning each and every part of the body and relaxing it, is another common technique. The third common technique which can relax the body is called guided imagery. Guided imagery means you just sit cool and calm without thinking anything, just in a comfortable position, and think of certain things which bring you a positive thing in your mind. This could be your past experience, or this could be your imagination. For example, you can experience a nice garden. You can experience a lot of butterflies going around. You can experience that you are in a exotic planet. Like that you can, or you can experience that you are on a lakeside, on a beach side, so that you can have certain imagery. Whenever you think of such images, immediately the mind slows down and the stress level breaks down. And then when you are imagining such things, you should have the sensory feeling. At the same time, you should train your mind that you are hearing the sound from the sea waves, or the sound from the calmness of a lake, or the chirping of the birds. So like that you can have. And same sense, other sensory feelings also, if you are able to imagine, that will put the mind in a positive thing, and it will reduce the stress on your mind. You need to practice this for about 10 to 20 minutes. Meditation is another form wherein you can sit in a quiet, relaxing environment void of any distractions. Sit on a ground level, keep your back straight, relax your entire body, and time to focus. Just focus on the breath, or focus on certain thing which acts as an anchor to calm your mind. This silence of your mind completely relaxes you. So breathe, focus on the breathing, body scanning, guided imagery, and meditation. These are common ways in which you can reduce your stress. Certain common other popular ways like tai chi, qigong, or prayer also help you in reducing the stress. Having learned that there are so many stress reducing techniques, I will try to discuss with you certain common tips which can help you in a particular set of circumstances. For example, when you are exposed to stress, you tend to have a overeating habit. You tend to eat more. Then the best relaxation technique is focusing on the breath. Just focus on the breath, focus on your belly, take a deep breath in and out. The stress or the eating disorder will be lessened. If you feel that your mind and body are not good, you feel early fatigability, or you're getting a lot of headaches, then you have to do a body scan or a guided imagery. Body scan or guided imagery is the best suited to you. If you've got stress related headache or stress related fatigability, body scan or guided imagery are the techniques. For example, if because of stress you are unable to focus on something, then meditation is the best way to bring you back to the focus on which you need to focus upon. So, meditation is useful when you do not have a focus, when you have a lot of fleeting thoughts because of stress. For example, because of stress, you tend to gain weight and your body is inflexible. Yoga or Tai Chi are the best techniques to calm your body and mind and bring your body into a flexible format. For example, if you are a religious person, then religion or prayer is another way for you to de-stress. Finally, I will share with you a quick toolbox for the relief of stress. For example, the common 10 common stressors in your life which can cause stress are being late to the office. So you can practice and plan by being in time to the office or before time to the office. Being late to the office is one of the common 10 stressors which people should avoid. Sometimes we get angry and irritated without reason. So you can overcome that by a smile or relaxation or breathing. I hope some of us remember Munna Dada MBBS. In that, the medical college professor, whenever he is stressed out, he simply starts smiling, starts laughing loudly. That is his way to overcome the stress. Instead of stress eating you, you can practice how to be getting relaxed or smiling or laughing to overcome the stress. If you are unsure of your ability, you take more responsibility than what you can do. There is another common stress. So you should know how to say no and when to say no. Sometimes you have been overworking, like lot of domestic responsibilities as well as office responsibilities, taking the child out, or you have got a driving class to attend. So many things are there to attend. In those circumstances you are overstretched. So in that circumstance you should know to delegate the responsibility and share the responsibility, so overstress is reduced. You think that you do not have enough time for stress relief, but as I have shown you in the previous examples, you should always find time. For example, if the Prime Minister of India could find time to perform exercise, why not you? So, you should indulge in healthy living and healthy stress reduction practices so that you can always find time for your life also, because stress is the one of the major culprits for you to eat away the time. For example, if you are feeling unbearably tense because you are unable to do a certain activity, just take a break from the activity. Try a small massage, try a 1 minute body scan, try to go for a small walk or a swim or a cycle, then you will be able to reduce the stress. Sometimes you feel frequently pessimistic. It is a very common thing happens for us. So you have to read books, try to overcome the stress by being positive in life. If you are upset by conflicts with others, you try to resolve them by talking to them openly. If you are worn or burned out, try to know how to relax and nurture yourself rather than doing more and more work to get results. If you are feeling lonely, that is a very common form of stress, try to become connected, mix with some friends, make new friends, and try to reduce your loneliness. The other common tip by which you can overcome this stress is by putting a worry box. If you feel worried about a particular thing, put your worry on a paper and put it in a box. At the end of a few days, you will realize how small or trivial issues for which you have worried upon. So, gradually you will understand what you were thinking of a worry right now might not be a worry tomorrow. So, if you put a worry box and you put your worry in that box, you will gradually know how to overcome the worries. Try a mini relaxation. We have knew about how to relax your body by focusing on the breath, on body scanning, guided imagery. So you don't need to do that for 10 to 20 minutes. You can focus on your breath for just for 1 minute. You can focus on your mind by just doing counting from 1 to 10 or 1 to 20. So mini counting, mini breath focus, mini body scan, mini massage, just for about 1 to 2 minutes you get off from the stress what you are in. That will completely release your mind. Mini guided imagery, and you know how to relax by doing some small quick 5 minute yoga, 3 minute yoga, no, for 3 minute relaxation. You should harness your point power of the mind by thinking of some very good things. You should think that you are flying in an aeroplane or a hot air balloon. Gradually you think you're viewing up the entire world from a height. Then you understand how small your worry is. So you can practice some small techniques like vaporization or visualization of headache, where evaporating your pain also, just by small simple techniques. It's like a simple hypnosis type of a thing which you can do, self hypnosis. Keep a gratitude journal. Gratitude journal means, For example, you had something positive today. For example, your child had did well in the examination, or child had given a good hug to you, or or your wife is happy because did help her in her kitchen. So some small simple things which you made other people happy, or certain things which you yourself felt happy because of certain other people's good gestures, you keep them on a paper and put them in a small book. This is what is called as the gratitude journal. You feel, or you should express your gratitude towards life and to your co-human beings. That is the best way to reduce your stress. And when you go back to the book sometime later, that's a excellent stress buster for you. You need to develop your personal plan for stress relief, and that is how you need to have. I am going to give you in the handouts what are the various small handouts, how to note down your stress and what relieves you from stress and what you need to do better beyond the stress. You can have this entire presentation on my website, through which you can get back to this presentation again, and by which you can be like a ready reckoner for you to overcome stress in your day to day life. In conclusion, I would like to say that we have discussed what is stress, how stress could be beneficial for you, how stress could be negative for you, how stress can be responsible for many diseases A to Z, heart diseases, hypertension, diabetes, and how stress can provoke unhealthy lifestyles like overeating, smoking, alcohol consumption. We have also discussed about stress at various ages of life, how teens, why teens develop stress, and how stress gets manifest in them, why teens are more prone for suicide compared to elderly people, and how elderly people stress can lead to heart attack and brain attack, how women respond to stress compared to men. And in addition, I tried to show you certain common relaxation techniques. They are all in our Indian culture, like focus on breathing, focus on your body, focus on your mind, which you have got some pleasant experience like guided imagery. So, all those things will reduce stress. If you got time, practice them for 10 to 20 minutes daily. But for example, if you do not have time, even in during your work also, you can take a quick 1 to 3 minute break and practice things like breath focus, imagery, body scan to reduce the level of the stress. I have in addition given you in my handouts the warning signs, personal stress warning signs. They are also available on my website drraghu.com/stress signs, which will help you to understand whether you are getting stressed or not. I am sure you could have enjoyed this stress and related thing. This has become little longer, but what I would like to give you is, because this is my first webinar and I have invited you all to attend my webinar, I'm sure we can discuss more interesting topics in future. On every first Saturday between 11:30 to 12:30, we can practice and we can interact, join, mingle, and thus reduce our stress. The topic for the next month, I would like to discuss another topic, is tips to boost your energy. On the 2nd of January 2015 at 11:30 a.m., you will have a presentation on tips to boost energy. You can also email me on raghu at drraghu.com if you have any questions at any time. At the same time, I would request you to visit my Facebook account, Dr. Raghu Cardiologist, and have a like so that I can be in communication regularly with you. Now, let me see if I have been, if I have uh, tried to clear all your questions and all your answers. But please do understand that stress and heart disease are a common thing nowadays, and using stress we can be positive and productive, and stress could also be negative in a lot of people. uh, and I would like to tell you at the end once again, if you got any questions, please put on your questions directly to me at raghu at the rate of drraghu raghu at the rate of drraghu.com for any queries related to stress, or sometimes in case if you want a quick tip for me, I can even share the PowerPoint presentation for you to have a repeat or look at if you have got any queries in future. And please do put a like on my Facebook page at Facebook FB bar Dr. Raghu Cardiologist. So please do understand that we have completed the webinar, and thank you all for your kind attention. Thank you. Okay.